The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be? With me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am Commander-in-Chief Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Day number 6 of training camp. Day number 1 with the pads on. It was a big day. It is a tone-setting day, if you will, because all the other stuff that is going on thus far is part of the process. You need it. You're ramping up these players. You're getting them back into the swing of things. But you truly don't get a sense, because football is not football without physicality. Let's not fool ourselves, okay? So you truly don't get a sense for what's going on without the pads being on. So today was a big day, all right? Rivera talked about the schedule. I told you about that yesterday. Today, tomorrow, pads are on. They're going to just go shells on Thursday, pads back on Friday and Saturday before taking a break on Sunday. So day number 1 with the pads on is huge. And the biggest reason is because we have some issues up front on the offensive line. Let's not beat around the bush. The one position that I think can hold this team back is the offensive line. A lot of people may point to Sam Howell and say that he's the guy that could hold us back. And obviously he can if he doesn't play well. But we saw last year the season really be derailed when the offensive line went to hell in a handbasket. When we realized very quickly early on, damn, we made a mistake with the 2 guards that they had recycled from their old Carolina days, and that we really didn't have a plan at center if Chase Rouillet went down again, because Nick Martin clearly wasn't it. Wes Schweitzer was dealing with a concussion and several other injuries. And so we really didn't have the depth that we thought we had. And the offensive line was torn to shreds by really good defensive fronts, and we struggled. And it really derailed our season. And so the one thing that I think most of us are a little bit weary of this year, the thing that we're probably most concerned about, is the O-line, and rightfully so. Today was one of those days where you say, all right, let's see what you got. Pads are on. Let's see what you're made of. And understand, and this is what I need you guys to really internalize. They're going up against one of the best defensive lines in football every day in practice. They shouldn't win on most days, okay? Now, it's early, and I want you to keep this in mind as well. 4 out of our 5 starters on the line are brand new from a season ago. The only guy starting in the exact same spot that he started in last year is Charles Leno Jr. So when you look at the other 4 offensive linemen, we don't know who's going to start at left guard. Nick Gates just got here. Sam Cosmi is coming from right tackle to right guard. And Andrew Wiley just got here at right tackle. So there are 4 new offensive linemen on the line in different spots. And so it's going to be a work in progress. What you can't convince me, though, and I won't, this is why I'm not as concerned as maybe some of you. I've definitely got questions. I am not sold on this offensive line, but I may not be as concerned as you are, is because we can't be worse than what we were last year. You can't convince me otherwise. We have more depth than we had last year. And more importantly, we're younger than we were last year. We're more athletic up front than we were last year. I can't say that we're significantly better, but half of the problem last year is we couldn't move. We had guys that were as stiff and old and just simply could not get out on screen. Screen is going to be a huge part of this offense. Getting guys out in front and moving down the field and putting a body or at least getting in the way is going to be huge. We got guys that can actually do that now. So I feel like it's going to be a lot of this. We're going to hear a lot of this. Offensive line was bested today by the defensive front. Okay. That was the case today. The offensive line was bested by the first team defensive line. I expect that. It's Chase Young. It's Montez Sweat. It's Deron Payne. It's Jonathan Allen. I expect those 4 to dominate those 5. So when I hear that the O-line struggled in situations and some of Sam Howell's struggles in camp haven't just been Sam standing back there reading the defense and he's making errant throws. Sam's getting flustered. Sam's getting pressure. Sam can't step up. Sam is flushed, okay, out of the pocket. And all of this is knowing he can't be hit, but still not having a clean pocket. Now, I feel good about Sam because even in that Cowboys game, those pockets weren't always clean. Sam was finding little avenues to throw through, finding little holes to get the football through. The pocket was collapsing last year. He didn't have a great offensive line in front of him in that Week 18 game against Dallas, and he still made it happen. He used his legs when he had to. And you're going to neutralize pass rush by some of the play calls. They're going to run read option, okay? They're going to be RPOs. They're going to be different ways to neutralize the pass rush. So I'm not as concerned. You're not game planning in practice. So again, you're just looking for mano-a-mano. I'm looking for you guys to gel. And here's something that is good to know. This would be problematic if it weren't the case. The offensive line, the starting offensive line, has looked better against the second team defensive line. When those guys get in there, Sam has a clean pocket and he's delivering the football clean and accurately. Okay. That's music to my ears because you're not going to see Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, and Chase Young every single week in the NFL. You're not going to see that defensive line. And as Ron said at the podium today, and I've been telling you guys this as well, practice. And if you've played athletics and you had a good coach, this should be his mentality or her mentality. I want practice to be hard so that when you get to the game, it seems easy. If you've got a great coach, that should be the mentality. I'm going to kick your ass in practice so that when we get to the game, this is nothing. I can remember as a kid playing, JV basketball. My JV basketball coach was one of my favorite coaches of all time. He kicked our ass in practice. He would literally blow the whistle on the line, suicides, blow the whistle and walk away. And we couldn't stop until he blew the whistle again. So we just be running. Let us piss him off. Let us be acting up in study hall, or we just run it. But you know what that instilled in us? We would get out there and we would be playing our full court press, our 2-1-2 trap and all of this. And guess what? We would be out there running around and expending all this energy. And we look at the other team and their sideline and they dog tired, tongue hanging down. And we over here like, this is easy work. That's what you want from your football team, or that's what you want from your team in general, is that practice is so tough. You get to the game, you go, look, bro, I was going against Montez Sweat, Chase Young, John Allen, and Daron Payne in practice. This is nothing. Who is this guy that I'm playing against today? He ain't none of them. That's how you want these offensive linemen to be trained, and iron sharpens iron. So you're hoping that eventually enough of this work, they'll build up a callus, and eventually, guess what? They'll be playing at a high enough level that will allow this offense to flourish and give Sam Howell and the offense time to do the things that they need to do. Open up holes in the running game. Allow these receivers and running backs who catch these screens to get out and make plays because they're out there getting on these guys and getting blocks down the field. Eventually, they'll be better. But in this early portion of camp, as you would expect, and I said the same thing about Sam Howell, and we've seen him struggle, specifically the last 2 days, in particular Saturday, he was not good. Howell was much better today. And we'll get to that in a second, but I wanted to start with the offensive line because a lot of people are nervous about the offensive line. I don't blame you. You have every right to be nervous about the offensive line. They're going to continue to struggle against the first team defense, and specifically the first team defensive line. And if they don't, I'd be shocked. I'd actually be disappointed in the D-line if they weren't taking advantage of 4 new offensive line starters. I'd be a little bit disappointed in them if they weren't taking it to them early on in camp. As camp progresses, as we near preseason work, I expect them to be winning just as many of those battles as the defensive line is and be ready to head into the preseason, ready to play some quality, competent football. That's the hope. We'll see as training camp continues to wear on and they progress. But right now, I'm expecting them to struggle, and they did for the better part of today's practice. But as I mentioned, the first team offensive line much better against the second team defensive line, and they should be, because now you're not facing Jonathan Allen, you're not facing Daron Payne, you're not facing Montez Sweat or Chase Young. You should be better. But in any event, a lot of one-on-ones and things of that nature today. You got the O-line one-on-one versus the D-line. You got the wide receivers versus the corners. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. So when the pads go on, those things become a little bit more prevalent as well, because you can amp up that physicality. You know what I'm saying? So let's talk about Howell. Sam had some up and down days the last 2 days of practice, particularly day 4, which was Saturday. He was not good. And I told you, there are going to be days like this. I'm not tripping. The roller coaster is going to go up and down, around and around. You can't get flustered. You can't allow yourself to get dizzy and feel nauseated when it comes to this quarterback situation with Sam. There are going to be days. And when we get to the season, there are going to be games. There are going to be quarters. There are going to be possessions where you go, come on, Sam. That's going to happen. There are also going to be times where Sam kills it, where Sam goes out and has a hell of a possession, a hell of a quarter, a hell of a half, a hell of a game, a hell of a week. And you're going to go, that's what the hell I'm talking about. But yeah, you got to take the good with the bad. So today was a much better day, much improved. And you gain that confidence with the pads on. I think as time progresses, he gains more trust with his receivers. He gets more into a rhythm with the tight ends and, all of the guys around him. You're going to see more and more comfort from Sam. And also, I think this is something people take for granted with Sam Howell. He's a much better athlete than people give him credit for. So even when things start to break down in a game situation, I think he's actually going to really flourish in some of those situations where maybe the pocket breaks down or he's got to get out and try to create something either with his legs or with his arm. And I think he's going to be able to excel at that as well. And you don't always do those off-script things in practice. So I think Sam's going to be just fine. And it was good to see him have a nice bounce-back day with the pads being on for the first time. Let's talk about a guy that I meant to mention yesterday because Ron brought him up. And I talked about him last week in passing. I didn't want to put too much sauce on it because I'm like, the likelihood is he won't be here. But you have to take this into consideration. I brought this up last week for a reason. EB came from Kansas City. The Chiefs always deployed a fullback. Always. They always have a fullback on the roster. And they, sparingly, they will give that fullback a bone, whether it's a fullback dive or they toss it to him out of the backfield, down by the goal line or in a critical third, or 4th and 1 situation, sneak that fullback into the flats, get him the rock, whatever the case may be. You got to excuse me. We got them cutting the grass outside the yard. So y'all probably about to hear a whole bunch of nonsense for about a good 15 to 20 seconds. Anyway, Alex Arma is a name that has come up. And I brought him up last week. And I told you guys, look out for Alex Arma because with the injury to Armani Rogers, there may be an extra spot at tight end. The assumption is you're keeping 4 tight ends. Well, maybe there's not a 4th tight end that intrigues you enough to keep. Now, the big kid from Arizona State should be a guy that gets a lot of looks. They really liked him last year, which is why they put him on IR so no one else could snatch him up. We'll see what he does this year. He should be the guy that steps up into that 4th tight end role. But in the event that he doesn't, we'll see what happens, right? We'll see what transpires. Alex Arma, however, is a guy that I'm looking at and I'm saying they're going to need a fullback. I really, truly believe this offense is going to have somebody back there now, whether it's an Alex Arma or they use one of the tight ends as an H-back or, a pseudo fullback, or they take, I've even heard Chris Rodriguez's name mentioned as a guy that they may try to, see if he can show the ability to be physical enough to handle some of those responsibilities so they can sneak him in the game in those situations, maybe even give him a carry or 2, throw him the ball out of the backfield. But can he be physical enough at the point of attack, meeting a linebacker head on in a hole, making that contact and allowing the running back to run off of his block? Can he be a lead blocker? I've heard that as well, so that's something to keep in mind as we move forward. But Alex Arma, Ron said yesterday, that, hey, we're working him at tight end as well. We're giving him all kinds of different looks. Don't count out Alex Arma. I'll just say that he had a touchdown today in the red zone drills. And so I wouldn't be shocked. Ron has a history with him. They have always had a fullback in Kansas City. I wouldn't be shocked if Alex Arma makes his football team. Remember, I did the undrafted series, right? The UDFA series that I did, where I was highlighting players that Washington had brought on board that had a realistic shot of making this football team. And there was a quarterback. He's already been cut, and Tim DeMorat, he's already gone. And he was last. I thought he was a long shot because they really like Jake Fromm, which I still don't really understand, but that's fine. So I knew Tim DeMorat was going to make the team. But I said the first guy that I highlighted in that series was Mason Brooks. If it wasn't Mason Brooks, it was the UCLA return man. But Mason Brooks was either first or second in that series. And I said Mason Brooks got the most money of any free agent that was signed at that time. Now, somebody might have leapfrogged him, but at the time when we gave him that bread, he was at the top of the list as one of the highest paid UDFAs of the 2023 NFL draft. And that speaks volumes. I mean, we had to outbid a couple of other teams to get him to come here. All right. They saw something in Mason Brooks that they liked. I did not love Mason Brooks on tape, but there wasn't a lot to go off of either. And I didn't like the fact that he couldn't get on the field at Ole Miss. But that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is he's here now. He's going to be coached. They clearly saw something in him that they liked a ton. And in one-on-one drills today, he got after Fedarian Mathis's ass. Now, one-on-one drills aren't going to be something that really highlights the strengths and the skill set of a John Ridgeway or a Fedarian Mathis. Those guys aren't pass rushers, okay? However, you get in a one-on-one situation, you want to kick the guy's ass that's in front of you. That's the bottom line, is you want to win that rep. And Mason Brooks not only won once, but he won twice against Fedarian Mathis. That was really the highlight of practice today. It was so intense. The first rep was where Mason Brooks stonewalled Fedarian Mathis, and offensive line coach, what is his name? Oh my gosh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. Juan Castillo. So he's the tight end coach / offensive line coach, assistant offensive line coach. He's really an offensive line coach by trade, but they've allowed Travell Wharton to take over that role. But he's overseeing all of that, kind of the tight ends, the offensive line. So Juan Castillo got so amped, jumped up and down, was going off because Mason Brooks just stonewalled Fedarian Mathis. They had to do it again. Now you done showed Fedarian up, so you got to run it back. And Fedarian tried to use a different move this time. He tried to give him a little hezzy inside, and Mason Brooks took that rib, slammed his ass on the ground, and pancaked him, put a little syrup on top, and everybody went nuts. And so look out for Mason Brooks. Now, again, long shot to make the roster. They saw something in him that they liked, clearly, and they're going to continue to work with him. He should be one of those guys that as we approach the preseason and you get into the second unit of guys coming into the game, he's one of those guys you should be looking out for. We don't know what's going to happen at left guard. We don't know what's going to happen at right guard, for that matter, because Sam Cosmi has had some issues, at times. Mason Brooks is going to be one of those guys, potentially, that they may lean on down the road. So that was something to mention. In the one-on-one drills today, Benjamin St. Juste got work. He got work. Jahan gave him some work and was able to get free and make a catch. Diami was able to shake free and make a catch. But that's not the biggest issue, because one-on-one drills are designed for the receivers to win. If you've ever been in a one-on-one drill situation, you know what you're running. The DB doesn't. He's reacting to you. He has no help on the play. He can't take a certain leverage or approach, because if I'm a receiver, and, he takes a certain leverage, I'm just going to run a different route if you have that option. Now, generally, you and the quarterback already know what route you're going to run. So if he takes the, certain leverage and he guesses right, you just got to find a way to get open. You got to make him wrong. But at the end of the day, it's set up for the receiver to win. And so Juice getting, catches on him and all that stuff, that shit happens. I don't care about that. It's the handsy nature of which he plays that's problematic for me. And I told you this when he came out of Minnesota. He's extremely handsy to the point where I think it's going to cost us. It cost us last year. Remember, he had a pick against Minnesota. Why did they call it back? Because he molested Justin Jefferson before he got the pick. And it was a pick six. I thought it was a ticky-tack call, but it was definitely contact. And if they threw the flag, I got to swallow it because guess what? Pause. Because guess what? He did have his hands all over him. He was a little grabby. He was loving and hugging and tugging. And he did the same thing against the Cowboys. And he did the same thing against the Eagles and they threw the flag. And I think he did the same thing in that Texans game. And that was the game he ended up getting hurt in, where he was a little bit grabby. He's got to be better at not having his hands on the receiver 15, 20 yards down the field. That was a problem at Minnesota that he got away with in college because they let these corners get away with a little bit more physicality. That's not something they're going to let fly in the league, and it hasn't, and he's been flagged on numerous occasions, and if he continues to do that, he's going to get flagged more, and I'd like to see him be better with that. So that's something to mention, but it's good to see Jahan and Diami, making tough contested catches with Juice, holding and draped all over them, still finding a way to get loose and make catches. Speaking of which, Danny Johnson had a nice pass breakup in one-on-ones against Jahan. I'm hoping Danny has a strong camp this year because remember, he got cut last year because preseason ball, he was awful last year. I think last year really did something for Danny confidence-wise. And them paying him speaks to the level of confidence they have in him. And I think that confidence that they now have in him, that trust, that contract that he signed entails, I think Danny Johnson, we're going to get a different Danny Johnson this year, one that's going to really be a guy that can help and step up and play some confident football for us. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyway, I digress. So we heard from a number of different players today: Jeremy Reeves, De'Ami Brown, Andrew Wiley, Emmanuel Forbes Jr., Sam Cosmi, Darian Mathis, and Ron Rivera. So we'll talk about that real quick. Jeremy Reeves talked about the fan engagement, and he said, look, man, I've been here since 2018. I've never seen it like this before. And look, everybody's saying that. Anybody that's been here for any amount of time, like, I don't want to hear from Jahan Dotson or Emmanuel Forbes on this. They just got here. Dotson just got here last year. Forbes has only been here a hot second. So, I don't want to hear what they have to say about this. But guys like Jeremy Reeves, guys like Tress Way, guys like Terry McLaurin and Montez Sweat, who have been here before the third number was a 2, like those are the guys that understand what this shit was like. Like, I love Terry, and I told you I love the guys that are aware. And Benjamin St. Juice is aware. Charles Hunnell Jr. is aware. Terry McLaurin is aware. Like, Logan Thomas is aware. I love listening to those type of guys speak. I think Cody Barton is another one of those guys, super aware of what's going on around him, and great at internalizing things and making sense of situations. Montez Sweat, like, he knew we were losing a lot in his rookie season. In his press conference the other day, he said we went 1-16, right? Like, bro, first of all, we weren't playing 17 games then. And second of all, this team has never had a 1-win season in its franchise history. So we never did that. But in his mind, we lost so much because he's not used to losing like that he was like, yeah, we only won like 1 game. No, like Terry knew exactly, like, bro, we went 3-13 in my rookie season. Like that's the kind of stuff that you're looking for. We're going to talk about Terry quite a bit here in a second. But Jeremy Reeves has been here since 2018. So he's seen the worst of the worst, and he's like, bro, I've never seen it like this. And, it feels like a game, the atmosphere, the environment, it feels like a game. And we're feeding off of that right now. So We just need it to continue. We gotta go out, do our part to give them a reason to continue to show up so that they can keep this energy going throughout the regular season and make these home games feel like something. Terry talked about that on the Pivot podcast. We're going to talk about that in a second as well. De'Ami Brown, who I think is having a strong camp. There are a number of guys that are having a really strong camp right now. Danny Johnson's having a really good camp. Benjamin St. Juste is having a really good camp. De'Ami Brown's having a really strong camp. They're guys that have had a really good camp to this point. It's early, right? You don't want to make too much of it, but there's certain guys that have stood out to this point. And De'Ami's been one of those guys that's had a really strong camp to this point. And, he talked about, the message that's being preached about guys coming in here, preparing, being professionals. Obviously everybody was asked the same question today. Oh, the pads went on, what does that signify? What does that mean? He's like, it's a tone setter. And I feel the same way. When the pads go on, you set a tone, right? We're going to be a physical football team. Again, this is not two-hand touch. This is not flag. You play with pads on, you play with helmets on, and it's a physical, violent sport, and head on a swivel at all times. Physicality. As much as they try to take some of that out of the game, you will never make football a sport that isn't physical. It's a car wreck. Okay, every time someone has the ball or every play, especially special teams in particular, it's a car wreck. Guys are slamming into each other. So he talked about, that physical nature of football. He's like, this is real football. When you put the pads on, it's real football. So he was talking about embracing that and looking forward to setting the tone with the pads on today. Andrew Wiley spoke and talked about the offensive line. And, obviously they're continuing to grow and mature. And, he talked about pads going on and how important that is and them continuing to grow as a unit. Same kind of message, we're going up against some of these guys that are going to make us better. Talked about his relationship with Sam Cosmi again and how, they're continuing to grow and really forge that partnership that you have when you're playing next to a guy. So, they even asked him about some of the quarterback stuff that, there was a play for him to try to score. It didn't go the way that he had hoped it would have gone, but he claims he has the best hands on the team in terms of the offensive line, I should say. So we'll see how that goes and see if they try to prove it at some point in camp, maybe have a little fun with that later on down the line. But he was like, I hope I get another opportunity to try to score. We'll see if that happens at some point. You never know. EB came from a very creative environment. They may go back. They may run that back and give Wiley an opportunity. When is the last time we had an offensive lineman score in Washington? It's been ages, man. I can't even tell you the last time. I really, truly can't. I can't tell you the last time I've seen an offensive lineman catch the ball for this team. So it'd be a sight for sore eyes. That's for damn sure. Anyway. Manuel Forbes Jr., he really talked about his favorite moment of camp thus far was the biggest thing that I remember him talking about. And obviously it was his pick six on Saturday off of Sam. And he's like, his first one felt good, and that was against the first team. So I'm feeling really good, and we out here competing and I feel good about where I am right now. So that was pretty much his message. Sam was talking about the transition, the one-on-one drills they did today, his relationship with Andrew Wiley, and how he's like, yo, Andrew's one of my favorite dudes on the team. You know what I mean? Like, and he just got here. So you could tell they're quickly building a rapport with one another. And Wiley had said the same thing 2 days prior, like, yo, Sam is my guy. You know what I mean? Like, we've really established a relationship. So those two are, again, forging that bond on that right side. The hope is that they both play well, they both stay healthy, and they're able to be dominant. Because, even if there's some struggles on that left side, if you can establish a dominant side of the offensive line, at least hey, if I need a yard, I can go to that right side. Hey, if we need to roll out, we need a sprint play, I do it. I mean, you would do that naturally to the right. Anyway, Sam's a right-handed quarterback, but even if, if we want one of those sides to be dominant, just so if I need something, I can go that way. So hopefully that right side establishes itself, and then the left side is able to do enough, So Cosme talked about, again, the transition to guard. Now that the pads are on, he was, told what Duran had said the other day, which was, man, Cosme going inside is crazy because he's super athletic and he poses a different threat. And we saw it in one-on-ones. Cosme went up against Duran and he stonewalled him. And so that's what Duran was talking about. Like, yeah, Cosme's an animal in there because of his athleticism. He's already a big dude. He can be physical. We've seen that. And now he's got the athleticism and the agility to be able to move sideways. And so I think Sam's going to be just fine. It's just a matter of Sam getting everything down, the footwork, the hand placement, the technique. And he talked about having a quicker punch. When you're at tackle, there's a bigger distance between you and the edge rusher. You got more time to set up shop, get your hands ready. He's like, immediately off the snap, you got to be ready. You don't have all that time to be bullshitting around, figuring out all of this, that, and the third. Get your hands up, get ready to strike. If you want to be the first one to throw that blow, get that jab out there, put it in that chest of that defensive lineman, slow down that momentum, and, and hopefully stonewall them and, hold up your end of the bargain at the line of scrimmage. And so he's like, yeah, it's a transition, but I feel really comfortable. And the more reps that I take, the better that I get. So, again, I think Sam's going to be fine. I'm not really too concerned about him, honestly. I'm more concerned about the other aspect, and you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to say it, than I am his ability and can he handle the guard position. Speaking of which, I saw something today. I'm not a big Ross Tucker fan. Ross is a cool dude, but I'm not, he'd be all over the place. But he was on a podcast recently, and he was ranking the offensive lines in the NFL, and he put them in different tiers and different categories. I think there were like 5 different categories, ranging from elite to poor, I think was the worst category, or, something to that effect. And we were in the category right before poor. So it was below average, I think is where we were. I think it was elite, above average, average, below average, and poor. And we were in the below average category. So he does not have a lot of faith in our offensive line. He said that, I think one of the quotes I saw was, we went out, our 2 big free agent acquisitions were Gates and Wiley, and they moved Cosme to guard, and I don't know if I like that move for him, and, don't really know if you've got enough up front to get the job done, essentially. So I think what it all boils down to is coaching at this point. All right. The last year, there was no amount of coaching that was going to clean up 230-somethings who couldn't move any longer. Like, I don't care how well you can scheme it up, you weren't going to be able to coach up athleticism. Everybody on the line has the ability to do what is necessary for the offensive line to be successful. Last year, we couldn't say that because we couldn't even run a screen correctly because guys couldn't even get out there and make their blocks. So you got all the tools now. You got all the traits that you need. Now it's about coaching. Can you get 5 guys on one accord playing at a high enough level that allows this offense to flourish? And we'll see. And then we heard from Ron Rivera. And, Ron talked about the pads going on and similar to Diami, and probably where Diami got it from. He talked about setting a tone. What this practice represented is it represented setting a tone for the rest of camp, into the scrimmage with the Ravens, and then into the preseason, right? So, talked about telling the players, look, we're going to ramp it up now. We're going to have a lot more one-on-one periods. We're going to have a lot more individual periods. We're going to have some more team periods. So they had 9-on-7 a day where all they did was run the football. Like, focus in 9-on-7. For those of you you're used to hearing 7-on-7, 9-on-7, it's the entire offensive line, which is 5 guys. You got your quarterback, that's 6. You got your running back, 7, and you got your receivers. All right, so that's 9 on offense. And then you got the 7 on defense. You don't have any of the secondary guys. It's just defensive line and linebackers. You want guys coming downhill. You want guys making tackles. And they know it's a run for the most part, right? They know it's a run. And so, and the receivers, I shouldn't even say receivers because it's the tight ends. Okay. So it's offensive line, your tight ends, you got 2 tight ends, and you got your quarterback and your running back. And if you want to take a tight end off the field and put a fullback on the field, you can do that too. But that's the 9, right? Versus the 7. Whether it's 5 defensive linemen, 2 backers, or 4 defensive linemen and 3 backers, you can do it every way you want. But that's what the 9 on 7 represents. So there are going to be more of those type periods, more of the one-on-one periods. So he's like, yo, and Ron was actually upset because I said the players are going to get a break this week. It was scorching last week. Remember, I was telling y'all, I said, y'all going out there, hydrate. It's going to be 96. It's going to be 97. It's going to be 98. It's going to be 98. That was last week's temperatures. It was high 90s all week long. This week, stark contrast. It's all 80s all week long. It doesn't hit the 90s until the weekend. And I'm not sure if it hits 90 on Saturday, it might be Sunday that it hits 90. Whatever the case may be, Ron was disappointed. He's like, I wanted it to be hotter because the players kind of got a break because it felt good outside today. So he talked about, them kind of getting into the swing of things. He talked about, the physicality, wanting to see what guys were doing individually. And of course, can't see everything. He's like, I'm going to go back, watch the film, see what everybody's doing. But he said, I love what the defensive line is doing. He's been complimenting them. I'm just telling you right now, some of it may be our offensive line making them, look really good. But this D-line, I think, is poised for a breakout year. Like last year, we were this close to having a breakout year. Even without Chase, with Deron doing what he did and Jonathan playing as well as he did, and Tez coming so close so often, we were this close last year. With Tez on that contract year now, and I think really in a position to take that next step, and hopefully, the work he did with Larry Johnson over the summer and some of the things that he may have implemented with Von Miller and some of that stuff that they may have done, maybe he takes that next step this year. But getting Chase Young back on the other side and seeing how the 2 D tackles have matured and how they've gotten better, I would be shocked if they don't blow up this year. Like, they have the ability to take over games. And Deron said that yesterday or Saturday, I believe it was. Deron said, we got the ability up front to take over games. And that's what we are aiming to do. It's to take over games. We got an elite group up front. We got to start playing like it. And we got to take over games and dominate, man. I think they got the ability to do exactly that. And Ron has been speaking very highly of them all camp. He did it again today. He sung the praises of that group. He talked about the offensive line and said, look, I'm looking for dudes. I'm looking for little things out of, specific players, but also out of position groups. In that offensive line, I'm looking to see how bad do they want it. I'm looking to see if they can gel together and get on the same page. What 5 guys? It may not be the 5 we put out there today. It may be the 5 we put out there tomorrow. We may have to keep moving pieces around to figure it out. But I want to see who wants it. We're going to find out real quick. Show me. He was like, show me. Okay? I need to see it. So I think, he probably wasn't pleased with the offensive line today, but even John Keim, asked the question, and Ron went exactly where he said, look, how much of that balance do you have to have between understanding that this D-line is stacked, they're talented, and they've been together for a while, versus an offensive line that's got 4 new starters. They're just figuring some things out. We still don't know who left guard is. Like, how much of that do you have to? He's like, that's it. Like, being excited about the D-line, but also being patient with the offensive line. And Ron said, that's it. Like, that's exactly it. Is you got to understand who they're going up against. Practice is supposed to be hard. We want practice to be so hard for this offensive line that when they get to the game, it's nothing. It's a drop in the hat. Like, yo, that's the best y'all got? Because if so, we're going to dominate today. That's what we want. And we're hoping that the work that they're getting in these one-on-one drills, in these team periods against the ones is going to help them. But then also, I like that they're dominating the 2s. Because when you go up against the ones, that's a different level of competition. When they bring those twos in there, it should be like a break. It should be like a relief. Like, okay, whew. All right, these twos ain't. There's no Deron Payne. There's no Jonathan Allen. You know, there's no Chase Young. There's no Montez Sweat on with the twos. We should be able to hold up our end of the bargain, and they were able to do that today. So I want to hear that continue, and I want to see them continue to close that gap between them and the defensive front on the first team. So that's day 6 in a nutshell. Good to get the pads on, get that first day out of the way, and we'll see how things continue to go with the pads on. So I had at least 6 people send me Terry on the Pivot podcast. I want to give a huge shout out to all of you who sent me the link so that I could watch the Pivot podcast with Terry McLaurin on it, because, you know, I'm not checking for that stuff. So y'all are my eyes, my ears when it comes to stuff like that. So I appreciate y'all. And it was such good theater. Like, normally when somebody sends me something like that and it's that long, I consume it in installments. So, you know, during the day I'm really busy, so I might get 15 here. You know, I get in my car, I might get another 30 there, and then come back in the house, get another 15 as I'm setting up for a show, and then get the other 15 later on that night or something like that, right? I break it up into segments. I sat down and I digested that entire hour in 4 minutes or whatever it was in one setting. Like, it was so good. And I knew they were there. Like, so I know you guys knew they were there too, because the first practice, Ryan Clark is out there, and I know y'all saw him dap up Chase when he came out, you know. So we knew they were there. And I saw Fred Taylor in the background. So I said, okay, they must be there doing a podcast. I didn't know with who, but I knew they were there for a reason. They didn't just come to DC to make a trip just to say hello and leave. So they already had gotten permission from the team to interview Terry, and they did that after day 1 of practice. And they sat down with Terry, and it was a great interview, man. Terry already reposted, you know, a clip from him saying it was his favorite interview he's ever done to this point. And Terry said it. He's like, I like talking about life. I really, you know, I mean, it's cool talking about ball and all that stuff, but I really like talking about life. And we can see Terry's a down-to-earth dude, but it's interviews like this that endear him to us even more. Like, Terry's already a fan favorite. He doesn't have to do anything else, just be himself. He's already a fan favorite. But it's situations like this, is moments like that where you watch him and he kind of pulls the curtain back a little bit more and makes himself even more vulnerable, that makes you even more of a fan of his and root for him even harder, right? You know, and, you know, I try to give y'all a game all the time, right? Because I told you, mentally, I'm always in people's heads. I'm always trying to figure out what somebody else is thinking, because that's my background. So I already told y'all what teams are doing to us. When I always tell y'all, hey, we looking at teams like, look, don't make the mistake of thinking Arizona not looking at us like food week 1. You a damn fool if you think Arizona ain't circle us on the calendar week 1 saying, hey, we about to go beat their ass. They got Sam Howell at quarterback. Oh, yeah, we about to go get us a dub in week 1. Don't think for 1 second teams don't see us and circle our damn name on the calendar, or at least were doing that. And what did you hear Terry say? Terry said, man, my first year, we won 3 games, bro. Like, teams saw us on the calendar and they were circling us like, yeah, that's going to be a dub, right? Like, how long have I been telling y'all that? Like, don't think like that's an athlete's mentality. Like, when you get a schedule, like when I was in high school, we would get the schedule. Oh, we beating Booker T, right? Oh, yeah, we beating Norview. Like, they were trash. We knew that was a dub. You see that? You circle out. Okay, I need to go 4 for 5 with 4 RBIs, and I need to get my rocks off in that game. Like, if I'm in a little slump, boy, I can't wait to see Norview, man. That's easy 3 for 4. You know, I'm gonna try to go yard with one of these. You know what I'm saying? You see certain teams and you know, hey, this is a dub right here. So listening to Terry talk about that, talk about life, he's a religious guy, and he talked about his faith and talked about Dwayne Haskins, and how close they were. And, it hurt all of us. Like, even though he wasn't here anymore, you never want to see anybody lose their life, especially at that young age. I remember I came on and I did the little quick video because I was caught off guard by it. And, I got kind of choked up myself, when he first passed, because it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, damn, you know what I'm saying? And, Terry got choked up talking about it because that was his boy. That was his ace. And, to have that happen, and they came in, and, what I didn't know, I knew that Dwayne was lobbying for them to take an Ohio State receiver. What I didn't know is he was lobbying for Terry in particular, right? That's what I didn't know. So that was a little bit of news to me that Dwayne went to the front office after he was drafted. Well, let's keep it a buck. He went to Dan Snyder and told him, "Hey, man, it would be. I'm telling you, Terry McLaurin, that's the dude you want." You know what I mean? And listening to Terry talk about when he came into the league, and this is why veterans are important. And I meant to talk about this yesterday because I was thinking about some of the veterans, like, Jacoby Brissett and, David Mayo. Somebody was like, "Oh, we're going to get a glob of Mayo." And I meant to talk about this. You need veterans on the roster. Like, it's great to have a young team, and you want young players, and you want most of your roster to be young, but you need those wily vets to show the young boys how to be a professional. Like, I remember John Bosley saying, look, when I talk to them, a lot of times, it ain't even about football. It's about life. It's about how to handle your newfound wealth. I was telling these boys how to invest. Like, I own all of these apartment buildings, and I own all of these properties, and I'm telling them, look, man, you got to be smart. You need those kind of veterans to steer you in the right direction. If you got a team full of young boys, that means you got a team full of knuckleheads, is what you got. And it's the blind leading the blind. I can attest to this as a Memphis Grizzlies fan. You want to know why we was over here getting put out of the playoffs early? You want to know why John Morant's over here cutting up? You want to know why Dylan Brooks is over here running off at the mouth? That's part of our identity, but it's also, you don't have that veteran to say, "Hey, shut the hell up. Don't talk to LeBron like that." Okay? Don't do that to him. You want to talk some shit to Draymond. That's cool. Draymond ain't gonna light you up for 40. Draymond ain't gonna control the game. You want to talk to Draymond? Go ahead. Don't say that shit to LeBron. But when you don't have any veterans on your team to steer the young guys and make sure that they come up in the game the right way, that's the kind of shit you have. You go sideways. And so you need veterans on your team. And Terry's like, it'd be crazy because they'll name some of the most trash dudes, and you be like, "What? This man named Brian Quick when he got here." But you know what? Brian Quick, second round pick, did not work out in his, first place where he was drafted with the St. Louis Rams. He can talk to you about the rigors of the NFL, the do's and the don'ts, what you got to do to stick around. He can talk to you about that. How I didn't work out in my first stop in St. Louis, but I'm still in the league. I'm still finding a way to get a check, right? And so when you hear them mention guys like that, Chris Cooley, when he was talking, like, man, guy that was huge for me was Brian Kozlowski when I first got here. You're like, Brian Kozlowski? He's like a career third string tight end his entire career. But he was huge for him. You know what I'm saying? And so you need those veterans. And we got a couple of them sprinkled in on this roster, and that's good. And Terry's becoming one of those dudes now. And so he talked about when he first got here, and the environment, and just how he pulled himself up by his bootstraps. Like, bro, nothing was given to me. We already knew the story about Ohio State and Urban Meyer sending him home essentially and saying, "Hey, bro, you need to go home, catch 200 balls a day, come back, and we'll talk then." Right? We already knew that story, but Terry thinking about coming out after his fourth year at Ohio State. And saying, look, I was prepared to come in and be the best gunner in the league. Like, Matthew Slater, I'm coming after you. You know what I'm saying? And then realizing when guys like AD, Adrian Peterson, and, some of the other players that were here that had been in the league for a while, that had played a lot of ball, said, look, man, no, you can do this, bro. Like, you fully capable. And I've always told y'all this. again, because I'm a big psyche guy. And I tell y'all this all the time from a psychology background. 70% of athletics is confidence. 30% is physical, God-given ability. Sometimes it's a dude like LeBron where he just got blessed with everything. He got in every single line and he got blessed every single time, and it ain't shit you can do. But I've seen guys with that kind of talent not make it because of up here, whether it's just lack of confidence or your head just ain't screwed on straight. LeBron wasn't the number one guy in his high school class, okay? The guy that was the number one high school player in his class didn't even make it to the NBA. So, again, that dude didn't even really make it to college, let alone the NBA. So, again, shit happens, man. And you got to have it up here. But confidence is such a big thing. And Terry, I love the fact that he was vulnerable enough to talk about confidence and how that shit is fleeting, right? Especially when you first get in the league and you're not sure, am I good enough to do this? You know, and he talked about, you know, struggling with that a little bit. But he got in here and guys like Brian Quick were like, bro, you can do this. Adrian Peters was like, no, dude, you got the ability to be one of the best. And so, you know, he said week one, and we all saw it week one against the Eagles. He's like, week one, I knew I could do it. And, you know, seeing all the things that he's seen, one of my favorite parts, and there were several. One of my favorite parts was Terry talking about the quarterback position. He said, I just need a guy that believes in me. And what did I tell you? I told y'all this last night, literally last night. I said, Terry just needs a dude. And I said he started to build that rapport with Taylor Heineke, where Taylor would just say, F it. Remember, Taylor had the shirts that said, F it, Terry's down there somewhere, right? Like, Terry just needs a guy that believes in him. And you saw what he said. I just need a dude that can look at me, see we got one-on-one, single high, and go, oh, word? Hey, and just give me one of these. Give me one of these little signals, you know, where you go. And you know, that's our little language that, hey, bro, run that go route, stop playing. Run that nine ball, right? Let's get freaky on them. Let's get some easy work done. For that safety get over there. I'm gonna look him off. Don't worry. I'm gonna take care of him. You take care of him, and we gonna do this thing. Like, that's what Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase had. They had that since LSU, right? That's what Kirk Cousins, and that's what they did against us. That wasn't a play. Kirk talked about it on quarterback. Kirk said, I saw I had one-on-one in the slot. Benjamin St. Juice against Justin Jefferson. I said, F that shit you got going on, Justin. Take his ass uptown. I got you. And that's how they got us for the 41-yard play. Like, that's what you need. When you see these explosive receivers, they playing with a quarterback that can get on the rock, that understands, and there's a rapport there. They got a chemistry. We got our own little sound. Aaron Rodgers would just step up to the line of scrimmage. Guy playing 9 yards off of Devontae Adams. He look at Devontae, tap his helmet, and Devontae just turn around and he just throw it to him. Devontae break a tackle, and now that's a 22-yard game. Off of a simple, hey, he too far off. Let me just get it to you. That's the kind of shit you only get when you play with a dude 4, 5, 6 years, right? That's what Terry is begging for. Like, let me just get a dude for 2 years. I ain't even had a guy for 2 years yet. The closest he had was Taylor Heineke, which is why they started to build a little bit of a rapport. He's like, that's all I need, bro. I really think I'm a top 5 receiver in this league. I just need a quarterback to come in here and stabilize some shit so I can build chemistry with them. So that's frustrating to hear because, you know, like, it's been a while and you're hoping Sam is the answer, right? That's the hope, you know, is that Sam. And then they asked him about the NFC East and, you know, he's like, no, I'm rolling with us, obviously. And we're the underdog and we're supposed to be. We are supposed to be the afterthought in the division. And so we'll see what happens. It was a great interview. I dare anybody to watch that and not come away, even more of a fan of Terry. I dare you to. And I left some parts of it out purposefully because I don't want to tell everything. And a lot of you haven't watched it yet. It just came out. So I don't want to make it seem like it's been out for 2 weeks and everybody's already seen it. It just came out. Do yourself a favor. It's an hour and like 4 minutes long. Do yourself a favor. Sit down and carve out about an hour of time for it and just listen to it all the way through. and enjoy. It's Terry at his most raw, his most vulnerable. He talks about everything from Dwayne Haskins and his relationship with him to struggling with confidence to, having to go into counseling, and talking to somebody that helps him with his thoughts and even talking about the team chaplain and all that stuff. And talked about his religion and his faith and his family. And his family is so important because when you got people building I told you, confidence is key. When you got people building you up, telling you, Jahan Dotson talked about that on the podcast that he was on, right? The Second Win podcast, when he was talking about, look, man, my tribe, moms and company, like, I was the best thing since sliced bread, bro. You couldn't tell me nothing. They told me I was gonna be great from day one. Same thing Terry was saying. So remember that when you have your kids and they playing sports or whatever, you got to keep putting that positive energy in them, letting them know that they can do it, that they're capable, right? You got to be their biggest fan. You can be their critic as well, but you got to be their biggest fan. They got to know that you supporting them and that you think they can do it. Because if you don't believe in them, it's going to be hard for somebody who doesn't know if they can do it or not for them to feel like they can do it if you don't believe in them. So anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section. Anthony P. Been a member for 13 months. That's awesome that I can see it on my screen now. This used to be an issue. Maybe they fixed this. Been trying to reach you on socials. That's hit or miss, bro. If you sending me nonsense, I screen that out. Especially on IG. I get a lot of people sending me random ass shit. I'm going to pass on that. But if you've been trying to hit me up and you just said something, either I just ain't get it, because I get a lot of stuff, as you can imagine, or I don't know why you haven't been able to get me. But continue to try. That's all I can tell you. Worst case scenario, if you can't, you should be able to get me on Twitter. But if you can't get me on Twitter or IG, you can email me. That's a long shot too, but I'm going to see it. Responding is the problem with me. I'll see it, but I might not sit down and type some shit back. But keep hitting me up. I'm a check to see. And your name might not be Anthony P on IG or Twitter. It might be some other shit. So I don't even know it's you. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, thank you for being a member for 13 months, man. We in the building. Y'all know what it is. Mr. HTTR, been a member for 7 months. Hashtag HTTR, hashtag Redskins Nation. Shout out to Mr. HTTR. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Red Wings 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, I literally just finished listening to the Pivot Pod right before this stream and was ready to ask you if you've seen it, LOL. Absolutely incredible interview. It was riveting stuff. If you haven't watched it, and I assume that everybody hasn't watched it. Again, it's an hour and 4 minutes or so. So I'm not going to give all of it away. We can talk about it again at another time after everybody's had a chance to consume it, but it is definitely worth the watch. Red Wing 01 writes, first of all, double up, thank you for doubling up, who writes, listening to Terry talk about Dwayne, his personal struggles, and how therapy helped him. I felt that. It's something I've been debating with myself. Not to get too much into people around me's situation, but it helps. I'll just say that. It helps. And so often, as males, I'm not even going to dig into, the African-American community as Black males, because we can get into an even deeper conversation, but just males in general. We're just taught to be strong. You're supposed to be strong, and, you're not supposed to really share your feelings. So, you just internalizing. As males, we internalize a lot of shit. And, a lot of people, now, oh, it's soft. That's how they view, oh, you guys are soft. We didn't do that. Well, that's why a lot of y'all are effed up. You know what I mean? Because y'all didn't talk about that shit. Don't glorify holding in your feelings and lashing out. Like, I thought Terry used some great examples, because that's what happens. Like, people don't even realize this shit, But it happens in everyday life. You build up all of this anger and frustration. You never let it out. You never talk to anybody. So there's no release, you know. And so something really minor happens, you know. My son can spill a cup of water on. It's water, bro. It's gonna dry. But I snap off on him. Why? That ain't got nothing to do with him and spilling that water. You mad about something else and you taking it out on him. And so often as human beings, we process things and there's no outlet to get it out. And you got to find that release, whether it's the gym, you know, whether it's a hobby, find your release. Maybe you just need to talk to somebody. That helps too. But you got to find a way to release that stuff. You cannot hold that in. That is not healthy. So therapy may not be for everybody, but you say that's something you're debating with. And I know you've gone through some trauma and you've been through some things, Red Wings. I would just tell you, you sit down and figure out if that's something that you need to explore, because it does wonders, my man. It does wonders. Red Wings 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, I also love how he acknowledges that he knows he can be a top 5 receiver if he gets that guy at QB. Kept it a buck, but didn't throw anyone under the bus. And that's always been Terry. He's never been a guy that throws people under the bus. But Terry knows I'm talented, you know, and this is the reason why I know he's capable of being in that conversation, is because no, he may not look like Justin Jefferson. He may not look like Jamar Chase or even Stephon Diggs for that matter. But you know what he is? He's a guy that has all of the attributes, all of the traits that is necessary to be a top flight receiver in this league. And he's doing it with all these different quarterbacks, with Case Keenum and Alex Smith and Taylor Heineke and, you know, Dwayne Haskins and so on and so on. Like, he's done it with so many different dudes, and Carson Wentz, like all the quarterbacks that he's played with. The list is so long. Kyle, it's ridiculous. And he's still posting numbers year in and year out. Now imagine if we stabilize that position and give him a guy, what those numbers could look like. That was always our argument when Eagles fans would try to come at us with A.J. Brown and his numbers in Tennessee and coming over to the Philadelphia Eagles last year, or DK Metcalf when he was in Seattle, because all those guys are in the same draft. And our same argument remains. All of those dudes have had steady play. You can shit on Ryan Tannehill if you want. It's still steady. It's still a guy that can get on the ball, a guy that he's built a rapport with, a guy that he didn't have to worry about who's starting at quarterback for us this week. He didn't have to worry about that. DK Metcalf is playing with was playing with a future Hall of Fame quarterback in Russell Wilson. What's Terry playing with? So for him to put up the numbers that he's put up in this period of time speaks to his abilities. So I like the fact that he's confident enough to know, hey, you give me that dude and I'll be right up there with them. I feel that way too. So anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of the Command Post Live. Day 6 of training camp in the books. First padded practice of the training camp period in the books. We will continue to document everything and keep you abreast of what's going on at Commanders Camp. Terry McLaurin was on the Pivot podcast. Do yourself a favor, go check it out. It was an extraordinary episode. And Terry talked about a plethora of topics. This is why we love this guy. And he talked about the love from the fans and how he feels that, and how, what did I tell y'all about the Indy game? Did I not tell y'all that was probably his best game, his favorite game? And did I not tell you that was the highlight of last season? If we're talking about a moment, not a game, the game was Philadelphia. I've already told you that. If we're talking about a moment, it's that one, right? Yeah, Terry's that dude. And you even got a couple of cuss words out of Terry too. Not that that's important, but you even got a little bit of Terry letting you know, hey, I'm about that life if I need to be. So anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up, take command. Until next time, you guys have a good one. I'm about to go right over to the Louie T Network podcast. Y'all know what that is. I got a lot to say there. So if you want to continue the conversation, head over to the Louie T Network podcast. The live stream is already up. I'm just going to switch banners real quick, and I'll be right on up. So I'll see y'all for that. Otherwise, I'll catch y'all tomorrow for Trading Camp Day number 7. Until then, you guys take care. Have a good one.